So I have graduated now to being able to do the clap on my own. I must be getting better. Okay, so what I'm here to do today, this is the 4th day of making icons. First day was trimming the boards down to the size that I want them to be. Second day was making the glue, making the gesso, and applying just one layer of glue onto the surface of the board without there being any cloth. So that was the second day. Third day, I attached the fabrics, which is just this, that's what this level is right here, just had the fabric. There's no gesso on the surface yet. So that was day 3, day 2. Then today, or yesterday, I came in and did 5 layers of gesso on this board. Both I have 2 boards here of this board. And so today we'll be doing levels, doing coating 6 through 10. And for the smaller boards, that'll probably just be like practice boards for trying out new ideas of icons. I may only go with 10 layers of gesso on those. This one here, because it's going to be hopefully a finished icon for the meditation hall, I'll probably go all the way to 15 on this. So this one here has 5 coats, and as I can see it right now, I can see there's lots of little lines that were caused by the bristles of the paintbrush as I was putting the gesso on. But also too, I can see some of the fabric, some of the texture from the fabric is coming through. It's almost like there's these little dimples, something coming through the fabric, and that's perfectly fine at this point. So today, the only difference between what I'll be doing on this board versus what I did yesterday is that as I'm building this up, maybe the next 1 or 2 coats, I'll just continue it the same. But once I get to about 7 or 8, these little areas here where I can see these dimples or feel it, as I feel the whole board, it just feels a little bit like sandpaper, not extremely coarse, but I can feel the texture of this. It's not smooth at all. And so as I do like coat 7 or 8, after it's 90% dry, kind of like this board over here. It's still a little tacky. Wouldn't do it on that one yet. But I'll come over just with a finger or 2 and just very lightly sort of go over and smooth out the surface. And as the gesso is about 90% dry or a little bit more, it still is, you can still move it around just slightly on the surface. And so I'll be with just very lightly with my finger trying to smooth out some of those dimples and little imperfections where I have too much gesso in certain areas. And then later in the day, as I get closer to 10, I will probably use my entire hand, the palm. Might just get it a little bit wet in the water, and then just doing really very hard, actually, rubbing and just trying to, almost like using my hand as sandpaper to level out the entire surface. And so that would be the process of what I'm doing today. Then tomorrow I would do coats 11 through 15 and doing the same thing with my hand, making sure it's as uniform as possible. So that would be day 5. And then day 6, after it's all dry, I would come in with some very, very fine sandpaper. Here's some coarser sandpaper I was just using to do the edges. But I would take something like, probably starting off with like something around 250 grit paper. And depending on how smooth I had it with my hands, but going over something really smooth, and maybe even going up as high as like 1,000 grit sandpaper, just slowly working it up. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but at a certain level, like a professional icon board would look almost like marble, polished marble, just really quite beautiful and almost mirror-like. I actually kind of like the scratches left in from the sandpaper. It gives it texture, and it's kind of an appearance that I like. It kind of brings in the element of dukkha, that life isn't always perfect. And I think that imperfection adds character, but it also is, I think it's sometimes beautiful. So This is heated. The gesso, so just heating it in the water there. And it's a little runnier than I would have worked. Oh, actually, before I do this, what I normally do is just with a little bit of this hot water, just introduce a little bit of moisture, just barely touching this paintbrush in the water there, so almost nothing comes out. But just getting the surface wet from the last time before it dried, after it dried. And I think what is happening here when I do this is that you're just making the surface a little more receptive to the next layer of gesso. Just by softening these layers that are on here, when I add the next layer to this, it's they're chemically like bonding together, so it's one layer instead of 15 separate layers. It can almost become one solid mass. So yeah, that's looking good. It was very, very light. In the past I've sometimes used a spray bottle and just very light mist over the whole thing. It's just more equipment I didn't think I needed, so I have a paintbrush and it works. I also, when I was cleaning my brushes yesterday, I try to keep the, as I clean this, you can see there's a little bit of chalk in here. So when I clean the brushes, I try to keep it and let it settle to the bottom, and then the next morning dump off the top bit of the water. And so there's a little bit of chalk in here. So I saved this, so as I'm pre-wetting the surface down, I'll use this with a little bit of the chalk and the glue that's in there. So, I'm trying to be frugal. So this process here, I'll just paint it just exactly like I did yesterday. I do try to alternate which direction that I paint in. So this coat I'm doing this way, and then the next one I'll go this way. I may even do a couple coats that way. I'm going to clean up a little mess here that I made. I just use the scrap fabric that I had here. A bit of hot water. This will be potentially a finished board there, so it's going to get that off. Come back to my icon board. The paintbrush is getting kind of, there we go. I'm just sort of going any which direction here, getting the gesso on the board. In my final coat though, I will definitely have it trying to be all in one direction. I'm just trying to get as fairly even coat as I can possibly get over the whole board. Areas where I can see it's not covered, I'll just kind of add more to those areas. Okay, I think that's going to be enough. Then I'll just add a little bit of moisture so I can move the gesso around a little bit here, but I'll try to get this layer, I'll go in brush strokes in this direction. And I'm just trying to avoid creating any places where there's obviously uneven amounts of gesso. I don't want to get some places that don't have any or are missing skipping areas, and then having some areas build up too high. Like I could just see there was a little bit of from the brush stroke, a deep indentation there. So if I just go over this with this gesso being wet and the paintbrush being dipped in the water there, it still allows me to completely move that around and level off the high areas and hopefully fill in the low areas. Now Father Damien was telling me that even though I'm just doing this one time here, because I've been adding more and more, this actually may constitute, say, two layers of gesso that I've done, even though it was still kind of wet. And so that's the finished board. I don't know if you can see the details of this, but it's, you know, still very, every time I use this paintbrush, it's going to be these highs and lows of the paintbrush marks on it. And that's why later today, when this is drier, I'll start using my finger. I don't know if you can come over here to this board here. Yeah, this is fairly dry now, probably even too dry. So if I just put my finger in here, I'll be doing this later, but you can see like area there that's okay. Just, yeah. So that's too much to do that. But there's it's like areas right here. You can see the dimples, and so as I just very lightly, I won't try to get them all out the very first time, but I can level out some of them. Yeah, so like I can feel here, I put water, it's kind of tacky right there. So I'm actually kind of moving some of the, very lightly, able to move some of the gesso on the surface. Like over here where there's those dimples, because this is dry. So even here, actually before I do my next layer, I think I'm going to go over all of these boards dry completely. Now just use my finger, but I'm going to try to just level out the surface. And I can see I'm doing that pretty hard. And it's not making it, it doesn't look, probably from the angle there, doesn't look that much smoother, but definitely, so like from here you can see those dimples, where here where I've done it, it's less. And then theoretically, then as I do 5 more layers, that'll start blending into the board. And then also too, getting 15 layers of gesso on here, when we do use the sandpaper, to me it's kind of appalling how much dust comes off, because that was material we put onto the board. But I think you're doing 15 layers just so when you do sand it, you used to have 5 or 6 still left in the board maybe. But hopefully not taking that much off. So yeah, so that's what I'll do. You can see not much is sticking to my hand, but I'll just wait for both of these boards to dry. I'll let them dry for about an hour. Come back in, I'll do this very aggressive, I think, with this time here. Making the board a little smoother. And I'll come back and I'll do one more coat of gesso. That'll be coat number 7. Come back after lunch, do number 8. Go for a long walk, which is part of my icon practice, sauntering in the forest here, and come back and do 9 before having a cup of tea, and then I'll do 10 before I do my evening puja. Have a great day.